Today's video, I'm going to be discussing Luca Guadagnino's latest film, Bones and All. This one was one that I didn't even watch a trailer for. I just got really intrigued by the description alone. Romantic type films are not my thing, but something about this was really intriguing. And not only that, but the director directed 2018's remake of Suspiria, which is easily very comparable to the original Dario Argento's film. That one is so good, but let's discuss this one. Abandoned by her father, a young woman named Maren embarks on a 1,000-mile odyssey through the back roads of America where she meets a drifter named Lee. But despite their best efforts, all roads lead back to their terrifying past and to a final stand that will determine whether their love can survive their otherness. Alright, to start off, this film has an awesome cast. You have Timothée Chalamet, you have Taylor Russell, you have Mark Rylance, you have Chloe Sevigny, you have Jessica Harper, who was in the original Suspiria, who played Susie Bannion. So I found that so cool that you have quite a mix, like a plethora of talented actors in this film. Great performances. I just love the story overall. I love how you have this like coming of age story that's interwoven with like this horrific body horror that's focused on this taboo of cannibalism. But you get introduced to Maren, who is this young girl who is very timid, vulnerable, who is navigating life through these circumstances, which she is in fact a cannibal. But despite her father's best efforts to keep her confined and away from society, she goes against the grain and goes to the sleepover where she has this intimate moment with one of her friends and ends up biting her finger off. And woof, that scene made me think of like the film Raw meets Badlands, meets Natural Born Killers, set in the 80s in the Reagan era. And this film just takes you on such a journey. It's just beautifully shot. It's like these warm tones. They go through various states and it's primarily starts in the Northeast and then takes place mostly in the Midwest. And she meets several folks along the way who are just very peculiar, to say the least. Sully, who is one of my favorite characters in this movie. I don't know why. I think Mark Rylance, the way he plays him, you feel like this sense of comfort, but it's also a sense of dread and like an unnerving feeling. There's something really strange about him. He's so eccentric. And the way he talks about things, that makes you feel really uneasy. But not only that, he talks in third person. He also keeps this lock, like this woven like braids of hair of all the victims that he's eaten. So Sully, while I think he had kind of good intentions in the beginning, kind of showing her the ropes, I just called it because I had a feeling he had like more nefarious intent. And going back to what I said about the cinematography, I think this entire film, it just feels very hazy. It feels very dreamlike. It feels like you're set in the time, just because I wasn't aware that it took place in the 80s until I saw like the TV, what's being broadcasted, and just everything else. Like Maren has the Walkman and their hairstyles and everything, like the mise-en-scene. And I think the overarching message, like cannibalism being used as this metaphor for people who feel ostracized in this world, away from everyone, who feel kind of like a nomad. Of course, this is a taboo and it's frowned upon, even though cannibalism has been around for centuries, since like the dawn of time, since human beings have ever existed. So it's nothing new, but it's so interesting seeing that topic being brought up. I always find it interesting when horror movies discuss cannibalism. I think it's just because it's so foreign to me, that idea of like eating another human being. But I didn't have any expectations going into this film. So in my head, I thought cannibalism was going to be at like the forefront, but it's actually not. Like, yeah, there is gore involved. There is violence. There's a lot of fluids. But when there are kill scenes where these characters are feeding, who are also known as eaters, I think it's done tremendously just because it looks kind of realistic. It's not too over the top, and that's what I was expecting. I mean, it's definitely grotesque, but it almost has like a beautiful quality to it just because, which I know is weird to say, but I think because the feeding feels more ritualistic. But what really kind of got me was just the back and forth dialogue with the musical score when it was getting really heightened. I guess fear of the unknown, not knowing what was going to happen next, especially when you have characters like Sully, who's just really unpredictable toward the end, which I'm not going to spoil, but that scene was just wild And the way it wraps up, it's really beautiful. That's what I like about this movie. It's just kind of hard to describe because it meshes so many things. Like you have like horror, drama, romance. I mean, this movie took me through a range of emotions where I actually cried at certain points. And most of those points were like at when she finds her mother and finds out more about herself and the reason why her mother is in the state that she is. And it just gets sad. I think it's just maybe because I read way into it and I was like kind of like being empathetic and relating kind of that feeling of alienation from the rest of the world or feeling like you're on your own. And it's beautiful just because she finds someone that's akin that they can relate. Even though they're totally different, they have something that they relate on. Even though with Sully, it's like that code of ethics where like eaters will steer clear of other eaters or they will not eat other eaters. But it's so interesting because he doesn't really follow that rule for anyone who has watched the film. So it makes me like, it gives me a total like mindfuck thinking like, so were you lying the entire time? Or is it just because you felt betrayed and just taking advantage of this naive poor girl? Because toward the end, he just behaves in such an erratic way. I mean, he was erratic the whole time. He was just a very eccentric character. He's just an enigma, to be quite honest. Not to use like a bunch of alliterations, eccentric, enigma, etc., etc. You know, any synonym to that effect, Sully was that. And the film really harkens back to the idea of morality, where these eaters are not a one size fits all. Not everyone has the same like code of ethics. And I love that you get to see her blossom, her character really kind of come out of her shell. And when it comes to Lee and Marin, that story arc of romance, it's just so beautifully like coupled with this musical score that's so calming. Yet there are points that the music gets really tense and there's Joy Division. The only negatives or mixed feelings I would have about this film is that I think it harkens back to a lot of tropes that we've seen in other films. I think also the second act or middle point of the film, it's just, it takes a turn that kind of loses my interest for a little bit and then it picks back up. So I think the beginning is great, the end is great. It's just like there's one little small section in the middle that just kind of like, it kind of lost me for a minute, but then it like picked it right back up. But yeah, the horror could have been ramped up a bit more, but I know that wasn't like the main focus of the film. And it was more so just concerned with the journey and these individuals meeting up and this just story that unfolds. As far as scores go, I gave this film a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which I'm really happy with. Another one that I would really love to own at some point. But yeah, guys, I'm really excited for whatever Luca Guadagnino comes out with in the future. If it's horror related, hell yeah, I'll definitely check that out. But I'm telling you guys, you should definitely check this out. Even though I'm not a person that cares for romantic films, like I said in the beginning, I definitely think it's worth checking out if you're interested in like that type of topic. If you're interested in like films like Raw, which I loved Raw, such a good movie. I would definitely recommend checking out Bones and All. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll be back soon. I'm going to come back with a video on 10 random like horror films, like Christmas related horror films to watch to get you through this seasonal depression, which I'm just getting through mine because I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has been feeling this way, but I've just not been feeling it this month. I think ever since October like ended, I've just been like bleh. But yeah, I'll be back soon. Bye guys.